Today's podcast is quite an unusual and unique one. It is with a Chilean coach, Sebastian Contreras, who's based in Argentina and he's coached in New Zealand. Why this is unique is that, unlike the quintessential podcast, this is a coach who is not experienced in terms of the 20 and 30 years, or the typical professional coach. He's been in the industry for 5 years. He has worked with youth clubs at community level, at semi professional level. However, his journey is very unique, and despite not having an amazing CV as compared to, let's say, a lot of guests on the podcast, I truly believe that his opinions of the game, his ideas of the game are right up there. It's no less than any professional coach, any top level coach. So this is the beauty of the podcast, and this is exactly why I'm not very bothered about the profile of the guest, because I just believe the lesser known they are, the more free they are with their opinions, and you can get some fantastic stuff. So he's had a unique journey. He's unlike usual coaches who start off at lower age groups within youth and then make their progress and then go into men's team adult football. He has done the opposite. He's started off at men's team and then gone under 17, 19, and then under 9, under 10, under 11, and all that kind of stuff. So definitely, this is why it's such a long introduction. Have the patience to, I suggest, have the patience to listen to the entire podcast, watch the entire podcast, and yes, it's quite an interesting chat with Sebastian. Today is a different podcast with Coach Sebastian Contreras. He is a coach with 5 years of experience, which makes it different because a lot of the podcasts are with coaches with more than 20 or 30 years experience. So this is also important because he's going to give us a very fresh perspective of his journey. He has done his Pro and A license through the ATFA, which we should go into more detail with soon. He's also coached in New Zealand, Chile, and Argentina. He's also a league winner, by the way, as a coach. So, Sebastian, glad to have you on this podcast. How are you doing?
Thank you for the invitation. I'm doing really good. Really good. Thank you.
Brilliant having
It
you.
was a good introduction.
Yes. So, can you tell us about your journey?
Yeah. Yeah, sure. I started coaching. Well, coaching sort of became important to me, or something that I wanted to do maybe 11 or 12 years ago.
Yeah.
We had our national team here. We had an Argentinian coach, Marcelo Bielsa.
Yeah.
So his football, his team, what he was doing here in Chile with our national team was something that we've never really seen before.
Yeah.
And kind of football really it sparked something in me, and it made me really want to find out how you achieve what he was achieving, given that we were never in the position that we were before him. So that sort of made it ignite in me, and then I just try to find the right circumstances to get my coaching journey started, which is one of the reasons that I moved to New Zealand.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I mean, we all have our inspirations, and what a coach Marcelo Bielsa is. What a top class,
Uh,
world class inspirational coach he is. And this brings me to my next question now. So, I'm inquisitive. You have done your licenses through the Argentinian Association of Coaches. So, is
yeah,
that an independent body from the Argentine Football Association? Can you tell me more about this?
it is. It is. Well, firstly, I'm not Argentinian. I'm from Chile, so it's neighbor country. However, they do offer online education,
Yep.
so that was one of the things that made me chose them. But to your question, in Argentina, they have the AFA. So this is the Argentinian Football Association, which is the governing body for the sport within the country.
Yep.
And then you have places like ATFA, which is the Argentinian Association of Coaches. And there's some other official schools where you can go and get your license. There's a few universities, as I understand, where you can get your coaching license. Um, but the one where I studied, which is ATFA, they're fairly well known. Many coaches that have coached here in Chile and then have gone on to um, coach in more competitive leagues and stuff like
Right.
that, they've all studied there. So for me, that was a good indication of the quality of the education that was needed for me.
Right.
And yeah, they're separate institutions. The ATFA does not depend on the AFA.
Right.
So one is the governing body for the sport, and then you have another one which is coach education.
So, is there any specific particular reason why you didn't want to do your licenses through the official governing body?
They don't really have one.
Okay.
What you yeah. So they have these institutions that I'm telling you. They are um, certified by the governing body,
Okay.
but they themselves don't do coach education.
Right. Right. Okay. So they're
So they deal
uh,
with competitions and other stuff other than actually educating
right.
um,
So they are
coaches
more
for
like
the
a
license.
coach education partner of the official governing body, basically.
Yeah. So these are all institutions that are all certified by AFA, which is the governing local body for Argentina, but it's also certified by CONMEBOL, which is the South American equivalent of UEFA.
Yes, yes. That's interesting, really interesting. And you started off your coaching journey in New Zealand. So what
I
were your
did.
roles there like, and what is the general football structure like in New Zealand?
So New Zealand football is really interesting. Um, it it is approached as it is a semi-professional sport.
Yeah.
Players do not get paid, even though they compete at a high level.
Okay.
So you have New Zealand football, which is the governing body for the sport,
Yeah.
which is broken down into six. Um, I may be wrong in here, but it's either 6 or 7 um, regions that
Okay.
are not corresponding to physical regions within the country.
Right.
So it's just them allocating certain places where they have a fair amount of teams that can compete within each other.
Okay.
So you compete by federation. My I started my coaching career in New Zealand in the South Island, and I was coaching under competitions within what was called then Football South.
Hmm.
I think it might have changed name recently, but it
Okay.
was either Football South or Southern Football. And you have little, so you have competitions within your confederation. So we did Southern Football. And then you also have the Chatham Cup, which would be the equivalent of the FA Cup in the UK. So
Right.
every single club goes into that.
Yeah.
And when you win your league with the highest league that you can play within your what is the word that I use? Confederation or whatever the term is. You move on to playing your island league. So if we won, we would have played on the South Island League, and then if you win that one, you go on to play the National League.
Right. And you had also said that New Zealand, its semi-professional players don't really get paid. So does this exist right up till the top level of New Zealand football?
Yeah, so you have some clubs might pay money, a fair amount of money to their players,
Yeah.
because if you recall, which is happening right now, is the World Cup.
Yeah.
There is Auckland City was playing the World Cup, so you have quality players. There's a fair amount of South Americans and European players that go to New Zealand and play, and you can really tell the difference in the quality of the players and the quality that they bring to their teams.
Right.
It is not by New Zealand football rules to play the players.
Yeah.
Like I said, the biggest some of the biggest clubs do pay. Some other clubs might offer different incentives to their players to stay there and to make them compete and try to give some depth to your squad because it's something that is really needed.
Yeah.
Whenever you go to clubs in Auckland or Christchurch, where you have big cities where you get a big pool of players where you can choose from, it makes it slightly easier. But then you go to smaller cities where the players available are just the ones that really want to play
Right.
rather than being, more talented players that they want to be there because it's the right step for their career. So there's a little difference there.
So is it?
Um,
Yeah.
no, no,
No,
you,
I
you
was
can
saying,
go.
so is it, if I'm not mistaken, is it called the New Zealand National League, the top one?
There is a New Zealand National League. Yeah.
Yes.
There's a
So
National League, there's a South Island League, and a North Island League.
right. So is over there, is it the same over there? Players still don't get really paid to play over in that league as well?
No, no. And that's it. Like the only paid sport in New Zealand is rugby.
Oh,
It's the only sport that has an actual professional league
right.
where players play and they behave and they develop themselves in an environment that you would call elite environment. Yeah, so you have dedicated coaching,
Right.
full squads that are getting paid for it. And if I'm not mistaken, even up until a few years ago, 7 or 8 or something like that, if you wanted to be an All Black, which is a
Yeah.
national team rugby, you had to play in the New Zealand League. So there
Right.
was that's the only sport. And then for us, for the rest of us who practice other sports, there's a club for every single sport that you want to practice.
Yeah.
So everything is through community coaching, through community clubs,
Yeah.
and in each club, depending on the amount of resources and volunteers and ambitions that they might have,
Yeah.
it's how they try to position themselves within the most competitive side of football that the country has to offer.
But with football being such a globally, popular sport, why do you think this is the state of football in New Zealand, that players can't really earn a livelihood through it?
It's interesting because um, football is the most played sport in New Zealand,
Yeah.
more than rugby, more than cricket, more than netball. But because it's so easy to play, I mean, I'm a South American. We grew up playing on the street. if whenever you were in school,
Yeah.
on your recess, on your break, you just grab whatever and you just start kicking it around.
Yeah.
And I think that the fact that football is such an inclusive sport makes it like that. So every single club accepts people and they find a good team for them to go and develop.
Right.
But getting your first team to get to that level where you have proper quality on your starting 11
Yeah.
and you also have depth on your bench and on your reserve team,
Yeah.
that's much more complicated because you need to be talking about 35 to 40 quality players
Uh,
within each single club to be able to put on consistent performances week in and week out. It is extremely difficult to replicate a starting 11. This
wow.
is my experience. Yeah,
Quite,
we
quite an interesting thing that you have mentioned over here. I mean, I didn't really expect that. But anyways, now coming back to your career. So the usual progression of a coach is they start off with a younger age group and then they move up they move on to bigger, to older age groups and then hopefully the men's team, adult football. Now, I
yeah
noticed that in your career, you have begun to coach younger age groups as
yeah
time has progressed. So you started off as a reserve team coach, then you became an under 17 and under 21 coach, and then
yeah
you became an under 6 to under
yeah
11 coach. So
yeah.
how come?
Well, it was just a little bit of fate, really. My particular preference is to coach adult competitive teams.
Yeah.
And when I first started in New Zealand, I approached every single club that I had around me, and the season had started maybe 3 weeks after the time that I started knocking on doors.
Yeah.
And where I found my first club, I'm really grateful for them. Um, they said we have an opening. We have an opening that you can fill.
Yeah.
Is the assistant coach of the reserve team, and
Okay.
I was like, okay, cool. I'll go and do that. Um, and that was just a start. And I was there on a Tuesday night,
Yeah.
which is when training is, and they told me just have a look. Do you like it? And I was like, yes. Okay, show up on Thursday, and then you have Saturday your first game.
Okay.
Cool. Um, Fairly straightforward, community coaching, community football. Um, that particular club was a big club within the city, and it's a club that has won national competitions as well.
Yeah.
Um, the female football team is also pretty big within the country in that club. So I liked it. It was a well structured club. It was a big club for what the city and the country was.
Yeah.
And they just gave me that opportunity, and I went with it. I liked it. It was adult players from 16 years on,
Yeah.
because we were moving. We had a very clear player pathway.
Yeah.
So whenever we detected some quality talent that we needed to bring up to our reserve team for a little bit more development,
Yep.
or even the first team when they were really, really good, we did that. After I left New Zealand, I had to leave New Zealand for family reasons, and I did that during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Um, and I came here, and I just wanted to get back onto the pitch and continue coaching. So there was a big change there, because when I left New Zealand, semi-professional, big club, well established. But then I came to South America, and then you have proper professional football, first division,
Right.
like competitions that you might that are broadcasted on TV and whatever.
Yeah.
So when I came back here and I wanted to get back onto the pitch, I made a few phone calls, and I was offered the opportunity to go and coach the reserve team, which is the under 21,
Yeah.
for a first division professional football club.
Right.
And so I did that. It was a good season. It was a fun season. Um, and I did my time with them the next year as well, where I coached the under 17s,
Right.
which, again, sort of progression wise, to me, coach 17 and 21-year-old, there's not much difference in terms of how you deal with the team and the kind of football that you can perform.
Yeah.
Um, and then when I finished that, I went on to Argentina to coach, and to finish my license, really. I needed to get some final hours for my pro license,
Right.
and I went to a first division professional club in Argentina. And what they had was, we have a space for a coach with the youngest, the littlest players, and you can do that. And I said, yeah, okay, I'll do it. I enjoyed it. It has its moments, but it's really not my thing. I'd much rather play coach adult competitive football.
I was
But
gonna.
it's interesting to understand,
Yeah.
when you look at Argentinian clubs and how big they are. This Belgrano in Argentina is just huge. So
Yes.
you understand the structure, the player pathway, the talent identification process that they have. So it's a fairly fascinating and really good experience. Yeah.
I was going to ask, so working with adults and having a pro license and then training the youngest of age groups. So were there any difficulties you faced?
Well, I don't have any children, you see. So I've never really dealt with children before.
Yeah.
So I had to deal with some things that were unexpected to me.
Right. So
But I had a good experience in Argentina. Argentinian kids are really well educated, really polite little dudes, and they love football as a country, as a culture. So it's when you're a coach over there, and you are coaching for a big club such
yeah.
as Belgrano, um, the amount of respect given to you by players, by parents, by guardians, and everyone around
Yeah.
just makes the job easy. But I don't know. Every now and then they'll come and ask, "Can you tie my shoelaces?" And something that is weird for me, or even
Yeah.
help them on game day to put on the socks and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That was a funny realization that I had at the time.
Babysitting is such a part of working with these young age groups for sure. Now, I was also
Yeah,
interested to ask to know. So, what's with you and civil engineering?
I am a civil engineer. I went to university after I finished high school
Yeah.
and did civil engineering. So I've specialized in hydraulic engineering, everything related with water and fluids.
Yeah.
Um, it's just because it's sort of there's a normal pathway for any average teenager or whatever finishing school. Here in Chile, I'm talking 15 years ago,
Right.
20 years ago, 20 years ago. Um, you had to finish school, get into university, get a good career, and then you go and you work.
Right. So, do you currently work
And
as a civil engineer?
no, I don't. I stopped working as a civil engineer, but I do have another job, because sadly football doesn't really
Yes.
pay the bills.
Yes.
So
So,
yeah,
yes. So again, this was something I had planned to ask. Now, the reality of football is that of coaching, football coaching is that yes, we are passionate. Yes, we want to give our life for the game and all that stuff. But very few of us can actually make a living out of this out of the sport and to make it even more competitive out of being a football coach. So were there any challenges you faced like in trying to or you face right now trying to balance both the roles of actually having a job and then also coaching?
well, balancing balancing the jobs is really not the hardest part, I would
Okay.
say. I'll say this is what you were saying,
Yeah.
how competitive this can be, and
Yes.
because every single one of us that gets into football,
Yeah.
no matter whether you're a coach or a sport scientist or a physio or whatever, um, it's because of a true love of the sport.
Yes.
So every now and then we will be willing to sacrifice things that your normal day job you wouldn't sacrifice for that.
I agree.
So balancing both is really not that. It's not the hard part for me. For me, the hard part was really finding the opportunities to be involved in football, really, rather than actually finding the time for it. Um, having if I have a football job, I'll probably move my life around that, and I will accommodate all my other schedule for me
Right.
to comfortably go to my training sessions and my game day.
Yeah.
I think for me that is really the the way to do it. And like I said, the hard part is
Yeah.
find a way to get involved
Yes.
rather than balancing life out, because we love what we do. So I will give, if I have to work 70 hours a week, because 30 of those is what football demands, okay, I guess I would probably go and do it
Right.
until I find something that's better for my health. But um, yeah, if I'm in football, I'll be happy.
It's a harsh reality, isn't it? It's a harsh
It is.
reality that that even if it's not the big money that you're looking for, even to, sustain yourself is a challenge. And we
Yeah,
still have so many people who are willing to take go for that.
yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
even here, like when I saw it in here in Chile, and I saw it in Argentina as well, where you have professional coaches. Many of the coaches that I worked with in Argentina, they were teachers at ATFA,
Okay.
because they have schools spread out throughout the country.
Yeah.
And so no one, like, only first team staff, players and coaching staff,
Yeah.
I think they are the only ones in football in the world that make a living out of being in football.
And then
Everyone else,
and then five losses, and then they're again at the same position as any other
and then
coach.
you're out. Yeah, exactly, exactly. So yeah, if you go into academies
Yeah,
here in South America, you'll still have to have a second job, which
right.
I find crazy
It is.
because it takes a lot. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of effort. There's a lot of energy.
Yeah,
Um, I live in Santiago, which is it's a big city. It's 10 million people city. Well,
right.
you know about big cities, I'm guessing, but
Yes.
um, usually football clubs are outside the city, so it's difficult to get to them. Logistics makes it hard just to be involved in it. So it's a
Right.
true sacrifice that people involved in football make to not get, the monetary rewards that
Absolutely.
every other professional gets in
Right.
whatever field they develop. So
I know.
yeah,
I completely agree. Completely agree. But yes, and again, this is. I'm happy that you're discussing this because this is the first time on a podcast. Actually, second time because we had a South African head coach of a professional team talk about how even after winning, you lose your job. But here you've actually given the reality of a grassroots coach or other youth coach that and yes, I mean, I'm sure everyone who's watching is going to resonate with this, that every coach at some stage has faced the same situation that you have described right now. But anyways,
I
uh
think,
yes,
yeah, I think you have to go through it. I think it's part of the journey.
yeah,
I don't think there are any coaches that have had it. Well, I don't know, Guardiola and Zidane, world champions that went on to their clubs were their idols. But
yes.
for normal mortals like you and me, I think it's a normal part of the journey. I think.
Yes, it's a bit easier perhaps for elite former players, ex-players who have played at a certain level because then they have a bit of retirement money that they
Hello.
can bank on and then enjoy their coaching. Yes, but yes. Anyway, so you
Yeah.
since you've done community coaching, since you've done semi-pro coaching in these environments, I mean. So, are there any challenges you faced coaching in these environments as opposed to maybe an elite environment?
Well, when you coach semi-professional
Yeah,
and you're still competing at high level,
yeah.
you are the club still demands that you play for points,
Okay.
even though the resources are not there.
Yeah,
So that's a challenge, right? And I think that's probably maybe not the hardest, but it's a really significant one because if you're not getting points,
yes.
you're still out. But we train 2 or 3 times a week. Um, we head coaches may be paid, may or may not be paid,
Yeah.
but then the rest of your coaching staff is not paid. Your players aren't paid, and you may find some quality players,
Hmm.
really good ones,
Yeah.
that they truly do it for the love of the sport and for how much they love competing.
Right.
Um, you you don't have a gym, when you do community coaching, so you need to find a local gym where you can take the boys and say, okay, we're going to do a strengthening class,
Yeah.
um, whatever, injury prevention session for you to do this and that.
Hmm.
Um, well, you have to scrap your resources. When you have to travel away, you still have to book coaches and buses and stuff like that, and you have to make the trip. So that's a day that everyone in the team needs to take.
Right.
Um, and that's an unpaid day, and the club is also spending money
Right.
in booking you a bus, a driver,
Yeah.
lunches, meals,
Yeah.
the whole equipment, everything needs to travel within the team.
Yeah.
So the challenges of community coaching come to me, like me personally, that I was lucky enough to actually coach a little bit of competitive football.
Yeah.
Is that when you bring that reality all together, and then you realize that you're getting demanded
Yeah.
Every single game you need to bring the 3 points, but
Yes.
the resources may not be there for you to do that. That makes it really hard. That
So you
makes it
have to
really
do
hard.
the role of a professional coach without having the professional resources. I get what you mean.
Yeah.
I get what you mean. So it's literally the same role you're playing, and that could perhaps make it a bit harder if you think about it.
It's all of it, and it's not even that you need to go and win and get the 3 points. The
Yeah.
team needs to play well.
Yes.
It needs to be attractive.
Yes.
It needs to be engaging for the people because we want people to come and watch and support us.
Yes. Yes.
And we have to work with what we have.
Right.
I'll grant it. Maybe you can say this is football. All we need is a ball and 2 goals,
Yeah.
one
I,
ball every 2 players, and we can do something. And we did,
right.
but the challenges are completely different.
Absolutely.
Because it's community, it's also very dependent on the commitment that people might have with the club. So
That's a
where you're a hit coach, or you're sort of high up in the pyramid of your club, community club, by the way. Um, it might be easier to convince people to come and work with you for free,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
but then
yeah.
you have clubs that don't get to that point just because from the get-go there's just no structure to hold any sort of ambition
Yeah.
in a realistic way.
I don't know what the state is like where you've worked, but at least I can tell you. So in the lower amateur divisions in India, you do well to have your entire squad present for a training session. So that's another big challenge. So not everyone from your starting lineup is actually present there. So
Yeah.
that's a big one, yeah. But anyway, so
So
now moving on to the next one. Now, I don't mean this in any judgmental way whatsoever.
that's all right.
Yes, but in South America, I have, from the limited research I've done, I believe that there might be a little bit of the literacy rate may not be as much, just like it is in India or in many other nations. So, as a coach, is that true, firstly? And secondly, if so, has it impacted on your coaching experience working with the players? Has it impacted on how you deliver messages, etc.?
That's a really interesting question.
Yeah,
Literacy levels here in South America, pretty much there's no illiteracy. So I would say that we're 99% people know how to read and write.
yeah,
That is not an issue in terms of state policies.
yeah,
Yeah. But then you have cultural differences. Like, for example, when I was telling you in Argentina, football is such an important thing for them that when you are involved in a professional club, no matter at what level, your players will pay attention to you, and, it'll make it easy.
yeah,
In Chile, students are a little bit more all over the place. They're a little bit messier. They don't really care about that much about what teachers have to say in school,
right.
what the importance of school actually is, because they want to be professional players. So they disregard the formal education a little bit.
Okay,
I'm going to compare Chile and Argentina because I know them both. Um, Argentina has a great educational system in place.
okay,
So you have children and teenagers that are very well educated, um, from their families, from the educational institutions, and by what the clubs do for them whenever they show up to training. Here in Chile, the situation is not as good. We have serious issues with education and the differences between public and private, and
right,
makes it a really complicated scenery. Obviously, most of our players come from humble backgrounds, and the lower socioeconomic sides
yeah,
of our society. And like I said, they don't really pay that much attention to what goes on to school, and they think that because they want to be football players, they don't need to learn math.
right.
So, yes, to answer your question, yes, it does affect how we deliver the message. because it needs to be extremely simple. It needs to be really simple, one, for them to understand that, able to say it in an amount of time where we will keep their attention.
Yeah.
Whereas that doesn't really happen in Argentina, for example. Their willingness to learn and to listen to the coaches is far better. I don't even, New Zealand players are just, out of 10 players, you have 6 New Zealand players and 4 British ones. And
Right.
it's an absolute pleasure to coach them in the sense of that you can talk to them, transmit complex ideas, and then they'll just go and do hard work to make that happen. But
So
yeah, the difference here is that people here they have cognitive issues, definitely cognitive issues, particularly in Chile. I'm
okay.
not gonna
So if this
say.
is the case, then as a coach, how do you deal with this? How do you try and reverse it?
Well, first is you need to. I think that if you're gonna make your team play in a certain way, you need to define that way. Say I'm gonna play like this, no
Yeah.
matter how it is, and simplify that idea as much as you can while still getting all the relevant parts of the message inside of it.
Okay.
So that the team knows that when they're on the pitch, they need to play in a certain way.
Right. Yeah.
And then use that philosophy of simplifying your message to bring it down to every single coaching session, to every single class. So start your class in your training session in a very concise way,
Okay.
saying, establishing goals right away. Today we're working on possession. Today we're working in overloading the final third, whatever your principle might be.
Yeah.
And then when you explain the drill, just keep it short and to the point. Even if the drill is difficult to understand,
Right.
you need to be able to explain it in a way that they'll figure it out.
Right.
And maybe they'll figure it out 80% when they listen to it.
Okay.
But if you're able to show it
Right.
and they understand what needs to happen with the ball at their feet, I think that that combination of explaining and showing is really valuable here. It's really it's a great resource.
Right.
And it's also, you need to find a way to connect with your players. Communication is everything, and it's the absolute basis for things to work.
Makes
Communication and respect. So if you're able to connect with them in an appropriate way, um, and they will have willingness to listen to you, and that makes your job easier. As the more you build your relationship with the player,
yeah.
the easier the communication is in every sense of the way.
Right. Yep.
To explain the drill, everything within the training session, to telling them straight to their face, this is why you're not playing this weekend, or whatever thing you need to communicate to your players.
We can't undermine the how important communication is, or the skill of communication is for a coach. It's kind of make or break for sure. And I
Mhm.
also wanted your opinion on another thing. So what are your thoughts on clubs that, I mean, most clubs that set aside a quite a big budget for their professional men's team, but not as much on the academy?
That, to me, that is the issue that I have with football, particularly here in Chile. Yeah,
Okay.
particularly here in my country. It's um, it's something that makes the development of the sport hard. Yeah, the competition level drops when you're putting money into first team for players that come do the job,
Yeah.
but there's just no incentive for the younger ones coming, from behind
Yeah.
and saying, well, why should I be doing this?
Yes.
Whatever the task may be. If he's not doing it and he's getting paid
Right.
$20,000 a month,
Yeah.
30,000, 40, $50,000 a month, and he's not doing the things that you're asking me to do here at academy level,
Makes sense.
things that things that you're saying as a coach, like if you tell a player respect is important, Discipline is important. If you don't do things on the schedule for the first team, you'll be fine. But then they go and they look at what's going on the first team with the amount of resources they have, and
Mhm.
they're just not getting the things done.
Right.
Um, there's no incentive for anyone really to try and do better, which is it contaminates the sport and it makes it hard for us to develop it in a way that we can increase the level of competition, make the sport more attractive,
Yeah.
more engaging, in actually try to use it as a tool for educating our young people, our young our players, the youth of our country. So I think that a fair allocation of resources within clubs, it's fairly key point if you want to have a successful project. Many times the immediacy of having to win this game so that we can go and play an international cup
Yeah.
makes people forget about the development of the 900 players that you have in the academy.
Right. Right.
You're recruiting boys that are 6, 7 years old, girls as well. You
Yeah.
have that same structure for boys and girls,
Mhm.
and there's just no resources. And I'm not talking about having money to buy balls or goals or cones and stuff like that. It's just paying the professional people that invested their time in educating themselves
Right.
to get to a point where they can call themselves professional coach, a
Correct.
professional like a physiotherapist. And it's people that need to go to university to get the degrees that they get,
Yes.
and um, they need to have the incentive of the development of their career in a professional environment.
Yeah.
They need to know the satisfaction of fair compensation for what they do, and they need to know that their work is meaningful. That the time and effort that they're putting in needs to be understood by the club in the same way,
Right.
because the allocation of resources is just ridiculous. I mean, you have first team sleeping in hotels when they don't need to,
Yeah.
but then struggling to hire a bus for the boys to go and play a regular match,
Yeah. Yeah.
sometimes within the same city. So
Right. I think it just comes down to the philosophy of the club, doesn't it? Because with the money involved and with the pressure that all the decision makers in a club are, they succumb to it. So that's why they probably want to go for that proven talent. But however, I agree with what you're saying, because if you have a strong youth system, then and it's not that you need to even spend like the exact amount, but if you can spend a respectable amount to ensure that the youth system is strong enough, as you said, coaches should be, coaches are paying money to educate themselves to get the certificate that basically gets them that job. So a strong youth system will ensure that they have a supply chain of good players. They don't really need to maybe go and spend that money. They might, because obviously they can get their own academy product on a much maybe cheaper contract at the beginning. And also, if there is a transfer market system, where then maybe they can earn some good profit and recover the money that they have actually spent on the academy quite easily. And that's why I have respect for certain clubs. Yes.
and things that are happening now, you're getting players transferred in the window transfer, academy players. So players that haven't even made their debut on the first team, they're being transferred from academy to academy for
For millions.
money. Yeah, exactly. And so yeah, we transfer the best one
Yeah.
from our club to yours, and then we don't see the money in our academy. Why is that money going to the first team? Why
Yes.
is it not being reinvested here in bringing more coaches,
Yeah.
more professionals to be in charge, more psychologists? We need sports psychologists.
Yes.
You know, uh, we need dietitians and health professionals to be in charge. We need full-time doctors
Yeah.
taking care of 700, 900 players. So I think it's more of well,
Yeah.
things work differently
No,
different.
I know, and I mean, I just want to ask you one more question here because since you have given so many good ideas, because what you're suggesting is actually, yes, very easily it can be done by the professional teams, but it can also be done by teams like, for example, teams that I run, maybe, so
Yeah.
by teams at all levels. So this was a wonderful suggestion. Any other suggestions that you, or rather, any kind of provisions you think academies should make in addition to ensure that their productivity is much better?
I think that what we love the game, and that's why we're involved in it, as we covered before.
Yeah,
So what we need as professionals being involved in the sport is the idea that our work is going to go somewhere.
yeah,
That what we're doing for the club and our teams and our players is something that is significant for everyone, and that we will eventually that the club will eventually understand how important it actually is. So,
yeah,
for example, in New Zealand, you have community coaches and stuff like that, and people that want to go and, if you have social teams, you get a parent and they go and they coach.
yeah.
But New Zealand football is asking everyone to get certified.
Hmm.
So you have to go get certified, spend your hour, spend your money,
Right.
and maybe not be a professional coach. So there's demands of making the game professional, because obviously the specificity of it is huge. We need to know how to not injure players and take care of them and a lot of stuff. Um, but we're not getting retribution from from what we're putting in.
Yeah.
And so for me, something that it's important that clubs do is make the people that make the club run, make them feel important, make
Right.
them feel that what they are doing it's worthwhile, that it's appreciated that you are coaching our kids, that you are putting effort into coaching appropriately. So when you have 6 7 year old boys, just let them play. When they have 8 or 9, make a 5 aside, a 7 aside, and then from then on, teach them this is how you play in a full pitch.
Yeah.
This is how you play tactical systems. And then when you hit 16, this is how you compete. We're going to teach you how to compete,
Yeah.
and this
Yeah.
is how the game changes from now on. So all of that is, maybe you won't need to get paid by your club,
Yes.
right? But if you can get the resources to be certified
Yeah.
and you retribute them with your work, I think that's appropriate, you know. But again, I think that the most appropriate thing would be for a more equitable distribution of the money within the club,
I agree.
because it will become a serious issue at some point. You see, like leagues like ours here in Chile is just steadily going down. It's
Right.
just not working
No,
because the competition is just dropping.
yeah, you've got some fantastic and interesting opinions on the game. On the game, on coaching in general, on systems in general, systems across different countries. Before I let you go, just I had to tell you that yes, I have another question for you, which is my traditional question before I finish any podcast. But before that, I have to tell you that I really enjoyed this podcast. I didn't even realize that we're approaching an hour into a conversation just about football. Yes, and this actually delights me because as a podcast channel, I am trying where I believe I'm a bit different is that I am not bothered about the profile of the guests. That are they? Do they that they don't need to be the typical well-known international name? Yes, we have had a few. Of course, I would like to interact with them as well, but there isn't any discrimination here. And today it brings me immense joy because I think you have shown that even with limited experience in comparison to, let's say, a lot of the coaches around the world, that does not really that does not determine the quality of your opinion or your understanding on the game. And there's so much that one has really picked up from, like, for example, how you believe academy football should be run, about you talking about the realities that football doesn't always pay the bills, about your unique journey of starting opposite, so starting with adult football and then going to youth. So it was a wonderful chat with you, Sebastian. And before I let you go, what are your plans for the future?
My plans for the future are I want to get fully settled with my business so that I can leave it running and I can go find a job in football and not have to worry about it not paying the bills.
Yes.
And then after that, I would like to make my way to first division football.
Okay.
Yeah, get
Yes, I.
involved into first division football and win. I like to compete,
Yeah.
and I want to do something. For me personally, it's about playing good football. My view from the team, like if I look from here to my team and from here to the fans,
Yeah.
which is I want the fans to be engaged by the type of football my team plays, and I want to make a statement about how we can do something really interesting with limited resources, which is always the case,
Yeah.
and make my way to first division football and compete for
Yeah.
interesting things, interesting trophies, big trophies, and do things that might inspire either people or the coaches to fight the odds
Yeah.
like we usually do and go and get to the place where we want to be.
Yeah.
I want to achieve that within the next 2 or 3 years. That would be awesome.
Yeah, that's some serious determination with a time-based determination, and I really hope, I wish you all the best with it. I've already told you what a delight it's been having you on this show, and thank you for taking time out to be a guest on this podcast.
No, no worries. Thank you. So it's a cool invitation. First time on a podcast, and I told everyone I got invited to a podcast. So, yeah, this is a good chat. Thank you for letting me express my opinions. I know that I might have some strong opinions on
Yeah.
certain topics and stuff like that, for the liberal experience I have, but I love the game and I'm a critic of it. I think that if we don't put our thoughts forward, the
Yeah.
game just sort of stays still and it doesn't let us do what we need to do. So thank you for the invitation. I really had a lot of fun.
Pleasure.
Yeah.
That's what made the podcast so interesting. Thank you for being on this
Cool.
podcast.